Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Waybright, and I, along with Jessica Krischels, Lincoln Draper, Holland Hardy, are co-owners of Remark Print Shop here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we're delighted to have three artists talk from our current exhibition, which is Re-Emergence, Explorations in Printmaking and Photography. Tonight we have Nancy Willis, Sophia Fernandez Garcia, and Bob Kiss. And if everyone would please, we're going to have time for questions at the end of each talk. And you're welcome to leave your questions in the chat or wait to the time for questions and unmute yourself and then ask your question at that time. So let's get going. So we're going to start with Nancy. Nancy, if you want to go ahead and start talking while I pull up your photo.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're good, Nancy. Go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, I want to say hello to everyone and thank you, Jessica and the Remark team for not only hosting this wonderful exhibition, but the series of artist talks. And so I live in the Napa Valley in Northern California, and we are currently experiencing some serious smoke and power issues related to the wildfires that are north and east of us. So I have been without power. I just got it back like 10 minutes ago. So if I disappear, you'll know why. But fortunately, yesterday, Jessica and I pre-recorded my presentation. So she's just gonna show the presentation and then I'll be available after for some questions. So how's that sound? I'm Nancy Willis, and I'm an artist in the Napa Valley, which is one of the most beautiful places in Northern California. It's located about 70 miles north of San Francisco. And I've lived here for about 30 years, realizing that I really need to be surrounded by natural beauty. But at the same time, it can be quite isolating to stay in as far as staying connected to world events. And as many of you know, right now in particular, with things going on in the news, seeing images of devastation in conflict zones, and knowing that's other people's reality of daily life, I had a hard time reconciling with that. So even though these images are extremely relevant to what's happening in Afghanistan, this is Sinjar, Iraq. And seven years ago in August, ISIS launched a genocide against the Yazidis, and in both Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria. And I was really moved by the images and overwhelmed by what was happening, particularly to the girls and the women who were being enslaved as sex slaves, sold, beaten, raped, and I had a really hard time reconciling what I could do. I felt completely overwhelmed. So in 2017, I was invited into an exhibition on immigration. And I thought it could be a really good time to put the spotlight on the Yazidi girls. So I didn't know anybody in Iraq. I didn't know any Yazidis. I didn't know any people in the military. But I started doing research and I found an organization called Yazda. And it's a nonprofit that helps bring awareness about the genocide and of the Yazidis, but also brought a lot of support Oh, I answered the phone, and it, unbeknownst to me at the time, he turned out to be the founder and the co-founder and president of YASTA. And his name is Hadi Elias. And he was well, just a quick view of where we're talking about. So this is the area in Iraq, and this is Syria. And Sinjar is a mountain, Mount Sinjar. And when ISIS came in, we can see Mosul right there. ISIS came in and into Sinjar, and the residents fled up the mountain, where they were isolated without water or a way out. So this is Hadi Elias and his family. And again, really relevant to today's events, Hadi was an interpreter for the US government. He's Yazidi, born in Iraq, family in Iraq. And he worked with the government and got a special, one of those special visas, and immigrated with his family in 2010 with his wife, Layla, and their 2 kids, and had another kid here. And he was a student in Houston on August 3rd, 2014, when he was getting frantic calls from his family about what to do, that ISIS was there. And in fact, his sister and brother were kidnapped. His brother was shot in the head in front of his sister, and his sister later escaped. But he had lived the experience. So once I talked to him, I knew for the first time I had unmitigated access to somebody who lived the experience, and that what I needed to do as an artist. So I did a portrait of his family for this exhibition in Berkeley. And then I brought him to Napa and to Berkeley to speak about his experience, about what was really going on over there, because I think that was, that's part of the problem about living in an isolated part of the country, is access to what's really happening elsewhere in the world. And when he was here, I proposed that I go for a grant, which he wrote a letter in support, and I received from the Arts Council. And I went to Houston and I created monotypes with 25 Yazidis that were living in Houston. And I didn't know anybody with the press, but I just started reaching out through social media. And this woman who teaches, Lauren Kusro, who teaches at the University of Houston, asked and said, yes, we can come and use the presses there, and you can see all the printmakers in the group, how beautiful their setup is there. And so Hadi would bring groups. I did 3 groups. I worked with a group of kids, a group of women and girls, and a group of men. And for most of them, they had never done any printmaking before, and they so loved it. It was really fun. And I just asked them all to create something about their daily life. So it could be about their daily life in the United States, like this slice of pizza, or it could be about their former daily life. So it was Mount Sinjar and the Yazidi flag, or many of the women and most of the men did something actually about the genocide. But you can see it was a lot of fun and extremely meaningful to me to work with them. And these are some of the pieces that they did. And then, and there's one Yazidi that's really well known, and her name is Nadia Murad. So after I did the group in Houston, Hadi made it possible for me to meet with Nadia in London, and she and her boyfriend Ahmed. This is the school where Nadia was taken on August, I think it was 7th or 14th during the genocide. She was taken to the school where ISIS separated her mother from her daughters, and the boys from the women. And the boys were put in trenches and killed. Nadia lost 6 brothers, and she ultimately lost her mother. She herself was taken to Mosul and sold as a sex slave. She was raped repeatedly, beaten, tried to escape once, failed, beaten again, ultimately did escape and found her way to Germany, where she became one of the first people to actually speak out about her experience. And she was one of the first people interviewed by CNN, and she was all wrapped up, her face wasn't visible, but ultimately that led to her partnering with Yazda, and they were able to apply political pressure. She ended up speaking she addressed the General Assembly of the United Nations. There were many steps before that, but she ended up addressing the United Nations at the age of 20, after everything she had endured, where she called out the assembly members and said it was their fault for not protecting women and children. So Yazda, Haider also, and Yazda had a lot to do with this, because when the initial genocide took place, Haider and his friends went to Washington, D.C., and they camped out in front of the White House, and they made their story told to the State Department, and ultimately it applied pressure onto President Obama, who permitted the first airstrikes in Syria to allow the Yazidis to escape off of Sinjar and into Kurdistan, where thousands of them are still living displaced in displacement camps. So when Nadia and I met, her and Abid came to my hotel room, and we did monotypes in my hotel room. And that was incredible for me, because I find her not only courageous and inspiring, but just the burden that she carries on her, both from the trauma and as an activist. So here we are. I had a little clothesline strung up in the bathroom. These are their hand-pulled prints. She did one of the family tractor that had a picture. It was a picture of her and her brother and sister on the family tractor, and Abid did his parents back in Sinjar. And this was about 6 months before she won the Nobel Peace Prize. And that was just a really amazing experience for me, to be able to print with her and to give her, I know what the creative process is like. And for a few hours, she was making art and didn't have all that pressure on her shoulders. So then I applied for another grant, and I brought all the work together and brought Haider back to St. Helena and exhibited the work. We did a screening of the documentary on Nadia called On Her Shoulders. And also there's a book that about her journey, which is called The Last Girl, which I highly recommend. Both things, very inspiring. So there are the images, and they are quite sweet and intimate, and they've been exhibited in LA and Dallas and Houston and here in California. And with that, then I started to create paintings in response to the monotypes. So, a lot of art is really an organic experience, or it has an organic form where it continues to grow, where you don't always know where it's going to lead you. So when I saw the monotypes, it was really intimate and personal, even that expression gets conveyed in the work, but I wanted to give something, and because I'm a painter primarily more than a printmaker, I really wanted to set a context for these smaller intimate pieces. So I asked her if it was okay if I did a painting of to memorialize it into canvas, and she agreed quite graciously. So the idea I had is all this work would travel together to university art galleries, and I was kind of on that path. And when we got interrupted by COVID and a lot of things stopped. But anyway, this is Sinjar. This was the schoolroom. There are photos of the schoolroom, you know, after ISIS was there, and with the remains in the schoolroom. And then this leads me to the series of photopolymer etchings that I've done, where I took a photo of a chandelier and then etched 2 plates with it. And then the center plate is coming from images right off the news. So I'm literally pulling them off, you know, online sources. And then I'm with the idea that this overarching image is going to create a form of a chandelier from a distance, and that you would have to get up close to really look at it. And that the center panel becomes, you know, what I'm trying to suggest is there's so much more below the surface of what we see in the news, in any given image, and, you know, really what is the cost of these wars. And in particular, you know, Nadia's message, which I think is really a powerful one, is that, you know, violence against women is used as a strategy of war. It's not a byproduct, it's an actual intent. And that's what needs to be eradicated. And, you know, and that all those people need to be held accountable. So these are some variations. These images are either of Iraq or Syria, and I'm changing them tonally and with different colors. And so each individual plate is inked, put together, registered, and then run through the press all at once. And sometimes I have to repeat that. So obviously there's a lot of mistakes. And I'm also really trying to suggest the, you know, with the chandelier, the fragile nature of human life and the human condition. And this piece is new. I did this about a month ago, and it was, you know, it took that image of the Yazidis in the trenches on Mount Sinjar with a chandelier. And this piece is now on view in Cincinnati. So I'm really happy that both these pieces are on display for the public to see. And this is the piece at Remark, and this is 2 girls skipping, you know, again, the emphasis on the children and how you know, their daily lives are being informed by this incredible devastation. And I choose the chandelier because it also, because of the light, it also, I really want to convey this sense of hope. And that is what I found from meeting the Yazidis, and this incredible joy and optimism they still held in their hearts in spite of all the trauma that they've experienced. And it's been a really powerful lesson. So I want to thank Remark, especially for giving me this opportunity to not only show this piece, but to be able to speak about this work and bring attention to all the conflict zones that are happening right now. So thank you.
All right, well done, Past Nancy.
Yeah, I know. So much better than if I had done it today.
And you're still with us.
I am. Amazing.
You can add anything. And if anyone has any questions, I just invite you to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away. Or if you're shy, you can put it in the chat and I'll read it.
The only thing I want to add is, again, the relevance it has to the images we're seeing in Afghanistan. You know, not just with the interpreters and people like Hyder, you know, people that really make a difference in the world, but the women and girls, and like what is the cost to everyone if we leave them behind, you know? So one thing I have learned from this project is one person can make a difference, whether it's Hyder, Nadia, or just making art to help get the awareness out there about something. So that's all I want to add.
I was really struck when you said, you know, you gave her just a few hours to just make art and not, you know, have to deal with everything else.
I have a question. May I?
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Bob.
I've been struggling with this. One of my hobbies is comparative religion, and I've read a series of books on every religion, starting with Hinduism, Judaism, Buddhism, Christian, Catholicism, Islam, Protestantism, Sufi, et cetera, et cetera. And what I can't understand, and you've presented it in a way that asks more questions. And that's good. We need to ask more questions because we'll never find answers if we don't. But it is, to a great extent, a religious and cultural thing that women in certain societies are devalued, undervalued, and that indeed rape and murder and mistreatment is a tactic of war. You're right. But it sometimes I keep asking myself, okay, I agree completely. I mean, I read reading Lolita in Tehran. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I've gotten this story. I mean, I understand it, but how does society oppose something that is inherent in certain other societies? It is inherent. It is endemic. I agree that it should be opposed, but how? You've brought it up. I mean, those are very powerful images, and it's very personal now. You see, you've made this, and this is what's great. You've made it personal. This young woman. I mean, my God, how much is one person supposed to take? And yet, I ask myself, you know, I'm not saying it is all of any given religion or society. There are always ranges of behavior. And this is one thing I witnessed because I have Buddhist friends, I have Muslim friends, Jewish friends, Catholic friends, Christian friends. I'm a student of Zen, anyhow. So, you know, I've people, and you see this incredible range of very open-mindedness toward women, very accepting, very egalitarian, to incredibly closed. But I'm not pointing the finger at Islam, I'm pointing the finger at fundamentalism. Because I see that in Christian societies as well.
I think you just have to be cautious about isolating any group of people, because
Agreed.
you don't have to look outside of the United States to see.
That's why I said it's fundamentalism. It's Christian
issue.
fundamentalism. It's the same.
No, it's not just Christian fundamentalism. You don't have to look at fundamentalism in the United States to see that women are devalued, that women are raped, that young people aren't protected, right? So it is a cultural thing. I think, you know, I think the main thing to keep in mind is to make sure that our actions help give women more opportunity, like education, like having their voices heard, giving them seats at the table everywhere. So it will be interesting to see, you know, what happens with world pressures as this new Taliban government tries to take place. So
yeah. Well, the speech at the UN is very important. The speech that she made at the UN is very important. That is, I mean, those things raise consciousness around the world. And you know that there's that old cliche, saving the world one person at a time, but you have made that step. You have taken one person, and it's very personal, and yet, as is always the case, the more personal, the more universal. It's very personal, that's her, but you've represented an entire issue around the world with her, which is, I think that's really great art. I think that's all I'm saying.
Thank you. I don't want to take up any more time because I know we have 2 other people.
Okay, no more questions for Nancy?
Unless anybody has any more questions.
All right, thank you so much, Nancy. Sophia?